So welcome students. Today's topic is dividend. Dividend means basically dividend is related to the portion of profit which is paid by the company or firm to its shareholders, right? So the basically in this unit we are going to cover our most important things related to dividend is that dividend theories, dividend models, and the factors determining dividend and uh, basically the relevance and irrelevance approach of dividend. So basically for the starting purpose, that what is dividend? So dividend means basically it is refers to the net profit distributed among its shareholders, right? So whatever profit earned by the company, it should be distributed to its shareholders as a part of net profit. Now, what is the most important thing? That is, as per the ICAI, dividend is defined as the distribution of share profit to its shareholders out of its profit or reserves. Now, when we talk about dividend, so dividend may be paid in any of the form, but maximum we can say that 99% that dividend is paid in the form of cash dividend, but due to some certain conditions, that dividend is paid in the form of bond dividend, stock dividend, or property dividend due to the problem of liquidity and liquidity crisis. Now, there are some factors which also kept into the mind while determining the dividend policy. That is, the first we need to think is what is the profitable position of the firm, because dividend is paid out of its profit, so we need to understand the profitability situation of the organization, whether that company can be able to pay the dividend or not. Second important factor which has to be kept in mind is the uncertainty of future income. Now, the uncertainty of future income, it means that what kind of dividend policy we need to apply, because if the future income is certain, then we can maintain the regular dividend policy, and if the future income is not certain, then we cannot maintain the proper dividend policy. Now, another important thing is legal constraints. So, we have to follow the Companies Act rules and procedures, their restrictions, their Income Tax Act properties, so that we need to complete these legal constraints also. Apart from that, we need to understand the liquidity position also, because the liquidity is most important thing for running of any company. So we, if we are going to pay the dividend, then the liquidity of the firm should be proper, so that we can pay cash dividend. Otherwise, the company has to pay stock dividend or something else. Now, the another important thing is the sources of finance. So we need to understand that where the company is going to arrange its finance or mobilize its finance, because otherwise the firm shall not go for the retained earning, because if there is a other sources also, so there is no need to maintain the retained earning, right? Another important thing is the growth rate of the firm, because the firm growth rate is if high, then the company can pay higher dividend, otherwise company cannot pay higher dividend rate. Next is the tax policy. So tax policy also affects the dividend policy of the organization, because if the government is giving a tax incentives, then there is uh, other variety of dividend policy has to be maintained by the companies. Now, another last important condition is that capital market conditions. So, capital market condition is saying that whenever the market conditions is affected, so its direct relation is with dividend policy. So, dividend policies may also get affected. Now, there are various types of dividend policies. So we can see on your screen that dividend policy is depends on the type of shareholders, profitability positions, or the variety or the working of an organization. So there are certain varieties of dividend policies. That the starting one is the regular dividend policy. So regular dividend policy is basically that policy which is providing a regular dividend with a proper interval. This type of policy is basically used for the small investors and retired persons likewise. Now, the other most important policy is stable dividend policy. Now, a stable dividend policy is saying that there must be a minimum amount of dividend which should be paid by the firm or organization on a regular basis. Right? So, in this stable dividend policy, there is constant dividend per share, then constant payout ratio is there. So, this is the best beneficial dividend policy. This is known as stable dividend policy. Another is irregular dividend policy. Irregular dividend policy means when the organization or companies are they are facing the constraints or unsuccessful business operations, they are not having a regular same category of profits, right? So in that conditions they have irregular dividend policy, right? Another important thing is there is no dividend policy. No dividend policy means when the firm is in a unsuccessful condition or not favorable condition, or we can say that firm may be in a condition of a lockdown. So in that condition, that company has to pay use no dividend policy. Now, the another most important thing is dividend decision. So when we talk about dividend decision, that is dividend theories, or we can say dividend models. So basically there is two categorization: irrelevance and relevance of dividend. Irrelevance of dividend is saying that there is no relevance of dividend on the value of firm or the share prices. And another vice versa, there is a relevance of dividend, that is saying that the dividend is having some relevancy, some relation with the value of the firm. Now, in relevance approach, there is an approach which is known as Modigliani mirror approach, which shows how there is a irrelevancy of dividend. And in the relevance model, that is Walter models and Gordon models, represents the relationship between the value of the firm and the dividend. So now irrelevance approach is saying that dividend policy has no effect of share prices of the company. There is no relation between dividend rate and value of the firm. And this approach is saying that in perfect market, rational investors, and there is an absence of tax discrimination, the firm is not having influence on share market prices. As we know that various theories, whatever is theories propounded, there is having certain assumptions. So the approach is having that assumption that the market is perfect. That means everyone is having a perfect knowledge about the market. Investors are rational. There is no tax. The firm has fixed investment policy, and there is no risk and no uncertainty in the market. So on the basis of these assumptions, approach is saying that it can be proved with the formula, that is P0, that is called prevailing market price of share, equals to D1 is the dividend to be received, plus P1 is the market price of the share at the end of the period, divided by 1 plus KE. Here we are saying that KE is the cost of equity capital, right? Now P1 is calculated as P1 equals to P0 plus 1 plus KE, that is cost of capital, minus the dividend to be received at the end of the period. Now, at the same time, if we have to calculate the number of new shares to be issued, that can be determined is like the number of new shares to be issued, that is called M, which we have to find out, into the price 1, P1, that is the market price of the share at the end of the period, equals to I is the amount of investment required minus that the dividend paid during the period, and that should be deducted from the total net profit of the firm. This is the way how we can calculate the number of new shares to be issued. So basically when we're talking about the approach, this P0 equals to D1 plus P1 upon 1 upon cost of equity is the most important formula to understand this approach. Now how we can use this approach? We can take an example, that is, let's take an example that company X, which is having a 1 lakh shares outstanding, and the current market price of shares is rupees 15 each, and here the company is expecting net profit of 2 lakh during the year, and it belongs to a rich class for which appropriate capitalization rate has been estimated to be 20% only. Here the company is also considering the dividend of 2.5 per share for the current year. And now we have to identify what will be the share prices of the end of the year. If where dividend is paid, and second condition is if dividend is not paid. So here the formula we are using is P0 equals to D1 plus P1 upon 1 plus cost of equity. Now the first condition which you can see in your screen is P0, which is 15 rupees given in the question. Cost of equity, that is 20%. D1 is 2.50. P1 we have to identify. So when we are applying that formula, we'll get the value P1 equals to 15.50. Here on the right side, that dividend is not paid, then here we are applying D1 equals to 0 and P1 equals to the 18, we got the value. So here this is the approach, where there is no relevancy in the dividend payment and there is value of the firm. Correct. So this is the way. Now there is some criticism like when the company is saying that particular things has to be constant, particular things has to be as it is. So this approach was criticized on the basis that tax does not exist, but practically in life that tax should be there, tax was there. Another assumption it is that there is no risk and no uncertainty of investment. It is not possible because everywhere there is a risk is available. Another important thing is that approach is not considering flotation cost, transaction cost, but in actual condition flotation cost was there. Another important thing is that they think that the investors are rational, but we cannot give assurance that investors are always rational and they behave rationally. Then another important thing is relevance of dividend. So according to this concept, dividend policy has considered to affect the value of the firm. So dividend relevance implies that shareholders prefer current dividend and there is no direct relationship between dividend policy and there is two models. One is Walter model. Walter model always support that the dividend are relevant and the choice of dividend policy always affects the value of firm. According to him, investment policy and dividend policy both are interlinked. So when we talk about the Walters model, there is two important thing is that rate of return. So now when we talk about the Walters model, there is two most important thing, that is rate of return and cost of capital. Rate of return is shown by R and cost of capital is shown by K. When we talk about this Walter model, we have classified the firm into three categories. The first is growth firms, second is normal firms, and third one is declining firms. Growth firm, when the rate of return is greater than the cost of capital, that kind of firm is having lots of expansion facility, their expansion is rapid, there is ample investment opportunity, they are able to earn higher returns. Normal firms are very limited investment opportunities and they are like a stable firm. Declining firm, when the rate of return is less than the cost of capital, that kind of firm is having no profitable investment opportunities. So there are certain assumptions that the firm is using only internal finance, that firm is not using debt and equity, constant return and cost of capital, there is 100% payout, EPS and dividend are constant, and firm is having a very long life or perpetual life, right? So on the basis of these assumptions, this Walter model has explained there is a relationship. That formula is very easy. P equals to D, that is dividend, plus R upon KE, that is R is the rate of return divided by cost of capital, bracket E minus D. E is earning per share minus D is equal to dividend per share whole upon cost of capital. So this is the way how we can identify the market value of market share, value of market share, right? So this is one example which you can see. We are assuming that the K is got 10%, that cost of capital. EPS we are assuming here is rupees 10, and we are assuming that the rate of return is R equals to 15%, that is growth, 8% that is declining, and 10% for normal firms. So you can see on your screen that we have developed a model that is in Volta's model. There is a three categories of firms: growth firms, normal firms, and declining firms. So in growth firms, we have put the values r equals to 0.15. So 15% can be denoted as 0.15. So likewise, we have put the values as given in question, right? So we are assuming that four categories, that when payout ratio is 0%, when payout ratio is 40%, payout is 80%, and payout is 100%. So we are applying our formula. When payout ratio is 0%, that means D is 0. So when we are calculating the value of share price P0, that here you calculate it. In growth firm it is 150, in normal firm it is 100, and in declining firm it is 80. Now we are increasing the payout ratio to 40%. So here D is 4, dividend is 4. We can calculate this payout ratio like earning per share into payout ratio, that is D. So here P equals to 130. In normal firms it is 100, and in declining firm it is 88. Likewise, when payout ratio is 80%, then P is 110. Normal firm it is again 100, and declining firm it is 96. So when we are using the payout ratio 100%, that our P is 100, then our normal firm it is 100, and declining firm it is 100. So here we can say that whenever payout ratio is 100%, then in normal firms or in growth or declining firms, the price of the share is 100. So now when we consider that in a growth firm, whenever the company is paying larger amount of dividend, that their payout ratio of that dividend is high, then in that case the price of the shares is declining. But in normal firms it doesn't affect, or it doesn't having any relevance with the payout ratio with the price of the share. But in a declining firm there is a relationship, that the company, whenever company is going for a higher payout ratio, the share prices of that company is increasing. Now the criticism again the same, that there is no external finance used, that is not possible. Then again there is the constant return, which we are assuming it is not possible, because return may increase or decrease, and the constant cost of capital, which is also not possible in real life. Now there is a Gordon model. Gordon model is suggesting that the dividend policy affects its firm's value. These are based on some assumption that all equity, the firm is using all equity, no external finance, cost of capital and return are constant. As we can see in the Walters model also, firm is having a perpetual life, that is a long life. There are no taxes. Then the constant relation, that is the G is equals to BR. Then the cost of capital, that is greater than growth rate, KE equals to greater than BR. Now the Gordon model is saying that P equals to E, that is earning per share, into 1 minus B. B is a payout ratio, upon KE minus BR. BR is the growth rate minus rate of return on equity, all firms. Now we take an example, the same example which we have used earlier, that is here in Gordon models. You can see that there is again three category of firms: growth, normal, and declining firms. Now what happened in this firm is basically we have to identify the payout ratio. So payout ratio, that means 1 minus B equals to 40%. So B is called retention ratio. Retention ratio means, say for example, the company is earning 10 rupees and the company is retaining 60% and paying dividend 40%. That means the retention ratio is 60%. So payout ratio, that means 1 minus B. B is here denoted retention ratio. Now that one more thing we need to understand is G equals to BR. BR means B is the retention ratio, that is 60%, and R is the rate of return, that is 15%. So when we are talking about 60% into 15%, that is 0.09. You can see in the solved illustration for the growth firms. Now for the normal firms, that BR equals to 0.6 into 0.1 because here in normal firms the rate of return is 10%, and for the declining firms that BR equals to 0.6 into 0.8, that is the 0.8 is 0.08 is their rate of return. Now when we apply into this formula that 1 minus 10, that is called E bracket 1 minus B. B is here retention ratio, that is 0.6 divided by R minus BR. R is 0.10 minus 0.09, sorry, K minus BR. Now when we calculated the price of the share, that is 400, in normal firm it is 100 and declining firm it is 77. When the retention ratio is decreased from 60% to 40%, that means the payout ratio will increase from 40% to 60%, then the value of share prices changes to 150 from 400. Normal firms the share prices are as it is, and the declining firm the share prices increases. When the payout ratio is 90% and retention ratio is 10%, share prices are 106, normal firm it is 100, and in the declining firm it is 98. So both the models, Walter and Gordon model, both represents the same valuation, same ratios, like, and normal firms is not affected by the payout ratio and retention ratio. Now there is some criticism. Gordon model is saying that there is no debt and equity, but practically in present situation that is not practically applicable. Gordon model is saying that KR and R is constant, but it cannot be constant, and there is no tax, so it is not practical. So by this there is. Thank you very much. If you have any doubt, you can call me on my number 95848 16373. Thank you.